Arctic supremacy. The ice is melting. The Arctic Ocean opens. Russia claims control. America proves them wrong. This is the confrontation that determines who dominates the top of the world for the next century. USS Gerald R breaks through Arctic ice sheets with Icebreaker escort. First supercarrier to operate above the Arctic Circle in naval history. This isn't symbolic gesture. This is power projection into waters Russia considers their exclusive domain. The strategic stakes couldn't be higher. Trillion-dollar resource deposits, Northern Sea Route shipping lanes, strategic missile submarine patrol areas. Whoever controls Arctic waters controls future trade routes and resource access that will define 21st century geopolitics. Navy Power TV takes you inside the operation that proves American naval technology can operate anywhere on Earth, regardless of environmental challenges that were supposed to keep carriers confined to temperate waters. Russian Northern Fleet commands approximately 40 surface vessels and 20 submarines based at Severomorsk. They've operated in Arctic conditions for decades. They possess icebreakers, ice-strengthened hulls, and institutional knowledge about operating in sub-zero temperatures that American Navy supposedly lacks. Russian military planners assumed Arctic environment provides natural barrier protecting their northern flank from American carrier operations. That assumption just died when USS Ford appeared north of Franz Josef Land, with full air wing conducting combat operations at -40°C. The environmental challenges are immense. Ice accumulation on flight decks, frozen hydraulic systems, reduced aircraft performance in extreme cold, navigation challenges in areas where GPS accuracy degrades. These are real problems that Russian propagandists claimed would make American carrier operations impossible in Arctic waters. But American engineering solved every challenge through advanced de-icing systems, cold weather lubricants, and operational procedures developed specifically for this deployment. When national security requires operating in harsh environments, American military finds ways to make it happen regardless of technical difficulties. Which capability gives America Arctic advantage? A. Icebreaker support. B. F-35C cold weather performance. C. Advanced navigation systems. Comment below. The USCGC Healy Icebreaker leads USS Gerald R through ice fields that measure 3 meters thick in places. This heavy icebreaker clears path wide enough for supercarrier to follow. Russian observers watch with disbelief as American carrier operates in waters they thought were inaccessible to non-Russian vessels. The psychological impact exceeds tactical significance. Russia built entire Arctic strategy on assumption that environmental conditions provided natural defense. American presence shatters that assumption and forces complete recalculation of what Russia can and cannot control through geographic advantages alone. F-35C. Lightning II, fighters launch from Ford's deck in conditions that ground most aircraft. Temperature sits at -38°C. Winds gust to 40 knots. Ice crystals fill the air. These are conditions beyond normal carrier operations envelope. But F-35C was designed with extreme environment capability that includes Arctic operations. Advanced engine materials resist icing. Heating systems keep critical components operational. Pilots wear specialized survival gear that allows them to function if forced to eject over frozen ocean. Russian Su-57 fighters scramble from Rogachevo Air Base on Novaya Zemlya. These fifth-generation fighters represent Russia's most advanced aviation technology. They're designed for Arctic operations. Their pilots train in these conditions regularly. They should have home field advantage. But home field means nothing when the adversary possesses superior sensors and weapons that negate environmental familiarity through technological superiority that creates engagement advantages regardless of operating environment. Stay with me because what happens next reveals why stealth technology matters even more in Arctic environments, where radar clutter from ice and weather makes target discrimination incredibly difficult for defenders. The F-35C fighters employ low observable characteristics that make them nearly impossible to detect against Arctic background clutter. Russian ground-based radars scan the approaches, but they're struggling to distinguish actual targets from false returns generated by ice crystals, aurora borealis interference, and temperature inversions that bend radar waves unpredictably. American fighters penetrate Russian air defense identification zones without triggering alerts. By the time Russian commanders realize threats are present, American fighters are already in missile launch parameters with targeting solutions on Russian aircraft and ground installations. Russian Su-57s attempt to intercept, but they're fighting blind. Their radar warning receivers indicate they're being tracked. Their own radars cannot acquire F-35C signatures at useful ranges. This is the stealth advantage that matters more in cluttered radar environments than in clear conditions, because defenders cannot use traditional radar techniques to distinguish actual threats from environmental noise. American pilots have clear picture while Russian pilots search frantically for targets their sensors cannot reliably detect. Navy Power TV reveals the brutal reality of Arctic air combat. Having advanced aircraft means nothing when those aircraft cannot find and engage adversaries with superior stealth and sensor fusion that create information advantages impossible to overcome through pilot skill or tactical maneuvering alone. AIM-120D missiles launch from F-35C internal weapons bays, beyond visual range kills in conditions where visual combat is impossible due to weather and darkness. Russian Su-57s take catastrophic losses without achieving single kill against American fighters. The survivors retreat to mainland bases. Russian air defense systems activate across the Kola Peninsula. S-400 batteries engage targets at maximum range. These are capable systems that perform well in testing. But testing happens in controlled conditions with cooperative targets. Combat happens in chaotic electromagnetic environment where American electronic warfare corrupts guidance systems and creates false targets that waste precious interceptor missiles on phantoms, while real threats penetrate defensive coverage. How many F-35C sorties can USS Ford generate daily in Arctic conditions? A. 50 sorties, B. 80 sorties, C. 120 sorties. Answer at end. The carrier air wing conducts sustained operations that Russian Northern Fleet cannot match. 4 airborne cycles daily, continuous combat air patrol, strike packages hitting Russian installations across Novaya Zemlya and Franz Josef Land. This operational tempo exceeds what Russian planners thought possible in Arctic environment. American logistics and cold weather expertise enable sustained combat operations that degrade Russian military infrastructure systematically, while Russian forces struggle to mount effective response against carrier strike group. They cannot locate precisely or engage effectively. Virginia-class submarine USS Colorado operates beneath Arctic ice, conducting intelligence gathering and targeting Russian submarines attempting to threaten the carrier group. American submarine technology allows operations under ice that Russian submarines cannot match due to navigation system limitations and acoustic signature problems that make them vulnerable to American sensors, even in acoustically challenging Arctic waters. The submarine warfare dimension of Arctic control belongs entirely to the United States Navy through technological advantages in quieting, sensors, and navigation that Russia cannot overcome with current submarine designs. Quantity versus quality takes stark form when quality includes ability to operate effectively in environmental conditions that degrade adversary capabilities while maintaining full combat effectiveness through superior engineering and operational preparation. Comment Q or L. Russian Kirov-class battlecruiser Pyotr Veliky attempts to engage American carrier group with long-range missiles. This massive vessel carries impressive weapons loadout. But impressive weapons mean nothing when targeting solutions depend on sensors that American electronic warfare defeats consistently. The Pyotr Veliky fires blind based on outdated position estimates. American carrier group moved. The missiles impact empty ocean. Russian Navy just expended millions in munitions hitting water, while American carriers continue operations unaffected. The operational lessons are devastating for Russian Arctic strategy. Their most powerful surface vessels cannot effectively engage American carriers even in waters where Russia possesses geographic advantages and decades of operational experience. American technology creates capability gaps that environmental familiarity cannot bridge. Russian vessels designed specifically for Arctic warfare prove inadequate against American platforms, with superior sensors, weapons, and electronic warfare that negate Russian home field advantages through technological superiority refined over decades of continuous development. If you believe American carriers can operate anywhere regardless of environmental challenges, type Navy Power TV right now. The strategic implications ripple across Arctic geopolitics. Norway, Denmark, Canada, and other Arctic nations see that American naval power can guarantee their security, even in waters Russia claimed as exclusive domain. This reassurance strengthens NATO cohesion and prevents Russian territorial ambitions from going unchallenged. Small Arctic nations cannot defend themselves against Russian pressure, but American carrier presence demonstrates that Russian military cannot control Arctic waters when United States decides to contest that control through force. Russian propaganda claimed Arctic as a Russian lake. American Ford carrier strike group operating at will above 75 degrees north latitude destroys that narrative completely. International shipping companies watching this deployment recognize that Northern Sea Route will not be exclusively Russian-controlled waterway. American naval power can guarantee freedom of navigation if Russia attempts to restrict commercial shipping or impose unacceptable transit fees. This is how military capability creates economic opportunity by preventing monopoly control of critical transportation. Infrastructure. The environmental monitoring equipment aboard American vessels collects data that will improve future Arctic operations, ice thickness measurements, temperature profiles, acoustic propagation characteristics, current patterns. This information feeds into models that will make future operations even more effective. American Navy is learning Arctic warfare while demonstrating current capability. This institutional knowledge accumulation creates compound advantages where each deployment makes subsequent operations easier and more effective through continuous learning and capability improvement. Russian Northern Fleet cannot match this learning curve because they lack the resources and political support for sustained, high-tempo Arctic operations that build institutional knowledge and operational confidence. The budget constraints facing Russian military prevent them from conducting the kind of continuous Arctic deployments that would build comparable expertise. Their vessels spend more time in port maintenance than at sea. Their pilots get fraction of flight hours that American aviators accumulate. This experience gap compounds over time as American forces become more proficient, while Russian forces struggle to maintain basic readiness levels. Navy Power TV examines why this matters for long-term Arctic strategy. American ability to operate carriers in Arctic waters means Russia cannot establish area denial through environmental challenges or geographic advantages. Every Russian military installation above the Arctic Circle now faces potential American strike from carrier aviation that Russia cannot effectively defend against with current air defense technology and fighter aircraft. The S-400 systems protecting Russian Arctic bases were designed for threats approaching from south. American carriers approaching from north create geometric problems for those defensive systems because their radar coverage optimizes for different threat vectors. Repositioning those defenses takes weeks. American carriers can appear anywhere along thousands of kilometers of Russian Arctic coastline with just days' warning. Russian Arctic military infrastructure becomes vulnerable to American strike in ways Russian planners never anticipated when they designed their northern defensive strategy. The resource implications drive Russian concern beyond purely military considerations. Massive oil and gas deposits lie beneath Arctic waters that will become economically accessible as ice coverage decreases. Russia counted on controlling access to those resources through military presence that could deny access to other nations. American carrier operations prove that Russian military cannot enforce such denial against determined opposition. This opens Arctic resources to international development and prevents Russian monopoly that would have given them enormous economic and political leverage over European energy security. Chinese interests in Arctic affairs complicate Russian strategic planning further. China wants Arctic shipping access. China wants Arctic resource development opportunities. China historically aligned with Russia on Arctic issues based on shared interest in limiting American influence. But if American carriers can operate in Arctic waters despite Russian opposition, then Chinese calculations shift toward accommodating American presence rather than supporting Russian exclusion strategies that clearly cannot succeed against superior American naval technology. The infrastructure requirements for sustained Arctic operations favor American military-industrial base over Russian capabilities. Building ice-capable vessels requires specialized shipyards with cold-weather testing facilities. Developing cold-weather aviation systems requires extensive testing programs and specialized equipment. Maintaining Arctic bases requires logistics systems that can sustain operations in extreme environments. American defense industry possesses these capabilities. Russian industry struggles with them due to technology gaps and budget limitations. This industrial base advantage means American Arctic capabilities will improve faster than Russian capabilities over next decade. Every Russian military installation above the Arctic Circle now faces potential American strike from carrier aviation that Russia cannot effectively defend against with current air defense technology and fighter aircraft. Russian Arctic strategy collapsed the moment American carriers proved capable of sustained operations in conditions Russia thought prohibited carrier presence. The Ford Carrier Group maintains Arctic presence for 30 days, continuous operations, zero weather cancellations. This sustained deployment proves American capability is not one-time demonstration, but sustainable operational posture that can be maintained indefinitely with proper logistics and cold weather preparation. Russian Northern Fleet attempted to maintain comparable operational tempo for first week, but scaled back operations due to maintenance issues, fuel constraints, and readiness limitations that prevented sustained, high-intensity operations in extreme conditions. American ability to maintain superior operational tempo in harsh environment demonstrates not just better equipment, but better training, better logistics, and better operational doctrine refined through decades of global presence that Russian military cannot replicate within their current budget and organizational structure. The climate change implications of this deployment receive less attention than military aspects, but matter enormously for long-term strategic planning. As Arctic ice continues receding, these waters become increasingly accessible year-round. Russian hopes that environmental conditions would protect their northern flank from American presence become less realistic with each passing year. Within 2 decades, Arctic Ocean may be ice-free during summer months. American carrier operations demonstrated today will become routine operations tomorrow as environmental barriers diminish and navigation through Arctic waters becomes comparable to operations in other ocean regions. Russia must plan for future where Arctic provides no natural defensive advantage, and American naval power can project force as easily in northern waters as in temperate regions. Which technology will dominate Arctic warfare in 2030? Icebreaker carriers, autonomous underwater vehicles, or directed energy weapons for ice clearing? Drop your prediction. Technology supremacy confirmed. Carrier operations in negative 40-degree conditions. F-35C sorties maintaining 80-plus daily rate despite extreme cold. That's the answer to our quiz. American carriers sustain operational tempo in Arctic conditions that Russian Northern Fleet cannot match due to logistics limitations and technological gaps in cold weather operations capability. Can Russia develop capability to deny American carrier access to Arctic waters? Current evidence suggests no. Their technology gap continues widening as American systems evolve and gain operational experience in Arctic environments. What's next for Arctic security? Continued American presence backed by allies who recognize that Arctic will not be Russian exclusive domain as long as American naval power can operate effectively in these waters. Subscribe to Navy Power TV, where elite naval power meets cutting-edge technology, proving American carriers operate anywhere on Earth, regardless of environmental challenges that were supposed to limit their employment. Superior fleets, advanced weapons, hit notification for analysis showing why American naval dominance extends from equator to poles through engineering excellence and operational expertise that adversaries cannot match with current capabilities or future procurement plans.